I have a ton of model trains, close to 140 locomotives to be exact, and today I'm going to show you all of them. Essentially, I've just pulled stuff out of my drawers and whatnot, and I'm going drawer by drawer, just showing you engines in no particular order. So I'll start with this one. This is my Bachmann San Francisco cable car. This thing is actually motorized. Bachmann sells a whole bunch of these that are unmotorized and dummies. I bought this thing for $20, basically new at a train show, and I've done absolutely nothing to it except for run it. It's kind of nice because San Francisco is somewhat local to me, so it's just a really fun, nice looking piece to have around. Here's another Bachmann trolley, a Main Street Bill trolley. I got this thing for free in a huge lot of trains quite some time ago. This thing, again, runs pretty well. It's a little bit on the noisy side, but aside from giving it a little bit of oil, I've done essentially nothing to this thing, and it runs pretty well. From the same free lot as that trolley, we have this Bachmann Jupiter. This thing I got, it was also essentially in brand new condition. It was missing its drive shaft, so I bought some new ones from Bachmann. I think it was probably far too expensive for those, probably 10 bucks or something. And I threw a Katie on it, gave it a little fresh oil, and other than that, it's just been a great, simple engine. Here's one of my first ever engines. It's an AHM GP18. This engine has been through quite a lot. It's in pretty rough cosmetic shape, but I'm not too upset about that. This thing has been one of the most reliable locomotives I've ever owned. I ended up replacing the motor with just a nicer one here. And since then, I've essentially been able to just rip this thing out and run it just about anywhere. It's been incredibly reliable. Recently, I actually removed the clip-on Cadies that these sort of style trucks had and replaced them with Cadies mounted to the body of the locomotive, and that's been a huge help. This thing just needs some work overall, but I want to keep this thing as long as I possibly can. Here's an AHM 240. I bought this thing at a train show broken for $5. The previous owner had done all this crazy modification to it, and I think it looks pretty good with all this. It's not perfect, but it's a really sharp looking engine. So I knocked the drive shaft out. One thing about it is the drive shaft was missing, so I just stole the drive shaft out of another one of these 240s that I had, and ever since then it's been pretty good, and I don't really have any other major comments about this thing. Here is an essentially brand new Proto 2000 BL2 that I bought at a train show for just $20, 15 after I got a discount on the thing. And overall, it was in really good shape. I had to replace the axles, as you do with most of these Proto 2000 units. And I also installed some Cadies. The little piece down here, it's off the locomotive now, but I have them because at some point in the future, I plan to put DCC and sound in this thing. Here's something really unusual, an Aristocraft 422. This thing took a ton of work to get going. I got it off of a friend, we traded some stuff, and I wound up with this. I had to replace the motor on this thing because the original one was bad. The gearing on it is not perfect, but it is pretty good, so I'll live with it like that. I had to put this styrene piece down here, which is an original, just so I could get this front truck to stay in place. And I had to modify the wire pickup, so the tender's got some newer wheels with some better pickup, and we got this kind of ugly wire going from the tender to the locomotive. But overall, this thing's a really neat and weird locomotive. Here's a Bachmann Gandy Dancer. It's essentially just a little handcart. These guys move. I bought this thing for $5 at a train show, and aside from giving it oil, I've done nothing to it. These little tiny Bachmann things actually seem to hold up fairly decently. This one's not perfect. I think one of these wheels is slipping a little bit, but because it's just a tiny thing, it's not a huge concern. This is my Hornby Peckett. I bought this thing quite some time ago. I haven't really run it all that much because I don't have a ton of rolling stock to go with it, but I think this is a really, really neat engine that I probably paid a little bit much for. I think it was about 120 bucks. I want to put DCC and sound in this thing at some point, but for now as a DC engine, it's really nice. Putting sound in this thing will be really difficult, so I might end up keeping it with a silent decoder if I really want to run it with DCC, just in a quick time frame. But we'll see. This one's a project to work on sometime in the future. This is an Athearn GP40X I got for free quite some time ago. This engine needs a ton of work. I want to rebuild it and turn it into a very specific locomotive to run on a very specific local. That'll be a project for way in the future, but it needs a decoder, lighting, maybe a new motor, a lot of detail work. There's a ton that has to go into this, so it's way down my list of priorities. This is another Aristocraft locomotive, and it's one of my favorites in my collection. I bought this thing for like $15 at a train show, and I've done a whole bunch of stuff to it. First of all, I gave it a Katie on the back. It doesn't spring perfectly, but it's perfectly fine for me. I also replaced the old motor with a nicer can motor, which makes this thing pretty slow, but it's a really nice runner. This engine's also really heavy. It does have a little bit of damage right here on the front plow, but I can live with that. It's a really fun, unique looking locomotive. Everything else is in really good cosmetic shape, and I want to keep this thing around for quite some time. This one's hard to fit on screen, but here's my Bachmann Niagara. I got this thing for free from another club member. It had some cracked gears, so I went online, ordered it some 3D printed gears, and replaced them, and now it runs really well. I haven't done anything else to it, didn't even have to give it oil or anything, just threw in some new gears. Well, I did put a little bit of oil on those, and it's been a really good engine ever since. I'd like to put a decoder into it eventually, but I know with this thing sort of being a split frame with a newer motor, it'll be a pretty big hassle. Here is one of my many shays. This is an MDC roundhouse. It's lettered for Westside Lumber, which is actually a lumber company that was fairly local to California. This thing, I just replaced the gearing in it with some brand new gears from Northwest Shortline, as well as a new motor from Northwest Shortline to replace the old open frame motor that was in it. And I also have this thing DCC ready as it comes from the factory. So at some point, I want to put a new decoder in this thing. Maybe sound, maybe silent. My other two shays are silent, but they make a lot of mechanical noise. I also put some Kadies on this thing, and overall, as of now, it runs really well, but it definitely needs a little bit more in the future. Here's what I believe to be a Ken Kidder Brass 040T. This thing's also, for one of these, in pretty rough shape. A lot of the brass is showing through. Someone put in a new motor that doesn't properly fit, so it doesn't really look right. It actually runs really well though, so I can't complain that much, and I'll leave it as is. But it's kind of a unique, fun piece to have around, and I don't think there's much more I'm going to be doing to this thing. If anything, I might get rid of it at some point in the future. Here's another Bachmann piece. This one is a high rail bus. It's just DC. These things don't come DCC ready, but I do have one that I've converted to DCC. I've done essentially nothing to this one, and I've just left it as is and have run it as is. Here is one of my Bachmann FBs. I have two of these that are identical for B&O, so you're only seeing one here, but I actually have two. Both of these things have DCC and sound, and they're really heavy. The only issue is I don't have any other B&O equipment in this scheme. I have some in a different paint scheme, which you'll see in just a minute, but I don't know. I might give these away to a friend or something, or I'll find some use for them. Who knows? Here is the B&O power that I actually own in this paint scheme. This is my FA and FB. Both of these are Proto 2000. This guy has sound. This guy has a silent decoder. Overall, I bought these things for like 120 bucks, I believe, which was pretty good. I had to replace the gearing, as is typical on a Proto unit, and I've got some pretty big plans for these things. I want to completely redetail them, mostly because these handrails, the plastic ones Proto units have, tend to break off, and I don't like them, so I'm probably going to replace them with painted brass or something at some point in the future. And I want to give both of these guys new decoders because I have a pretty long Coltrane that I'm trying to build up for these guys to pull, and I want that to be pretty nice and make these engines really nice. Here's my Bachmann Spectrum 210-2. This thing actually has DCC and sound, although it has a bad speaker, so you don't really hear the sound. I bought this thing for a total of $100, which seemed like a great deal. I put some Kadies on this thing, and other than that, I've done nothing. I do need to number this locomotive in the future though, and again, give it a new speaker, and then this thing should be good as new and good to go. Here is my other Bachmann high rail bus. This one actually has DCC that I hardwired in. I do want to redo my wiring on this thing at some point because it's not very good, but overall, this thing, again, has run really well for me. This is my DCC Tyco Virginian 040. I got this thing from a trade with a friend quite some time ago, and something really neat is that it actually runs great for being a Tyco with a decoder. I upgraded the magnets on the original motor to be neodymium, and that's made a huge difference. I can run this thing for close to 2 hours without it even getting warm. I tried installing a Keep Alive, and that didn't seem to do much, so I'll have to try and mess with that in the near future. And I have a little work train that this thing pulls, and it's been a really reliable, really good running engine. Here is my Bachmann Spectrum 460. I got this thing with a trade from a different friend. This one I got DC and just threw a spare decoder I had in it. This thing needs quite a bit done to it. I'd like to put DCC and sound in it eventually. It desperately needs a Keep Alive when I do that because it's got a really bad stalling problem. And I think in the future I would like to re-letter it to some other railroad that's not Union Pacific because the club I'm a member of has another engine that's nearly identical to this one, except it's off by one number. Here is one of the most expensive locomotives I own, which I actually got for free. This is a Union Terminal Imports Alco PA. I got this thing as essentially a parts engine from another member of the club I'm part of and was able to rebuild it. It's got the chassis from, I believe, a PA1 that had the gray livery and this much nicer shell, which I was able to put on. I have installed a Tsunami 2 decoder, a really good Zemo speaker, and Keep Alives, and I've done this thing for another one of these as well. And here's the other one. This one actually has the original frame. However, one of the trucks on this thing was missing. So we had a spare E-unit truck that was from the same manufacturer that actually fits. It doesn't look perfect, but from a distance, it looks pretty good. And even with that, these things probably some of the more prized possessions of my fleet. Here's another Bachmann High Rail, this time in truck form. This was the first DCC engine that I ever got, I think about 4 years ago at this point. So I've had it for quite some time. I've never encountered any major issues with this thing. It's just run and been a really reliable thing. I don't know why, but most of these Bachmann tiny little things have always been insanely reliable for me, and I think very, very rarely have I ever had any issues with them. Here's another one of my favorite locomotives. This is a Proto 2000 Southern Pacific GP9. I was actually given this for free by another club member quite some time ago. It's a really nice locomotive too. It's got some cosmetic damage and whatnot, but I can live with that. It has a really good decoder, I don't know what type, and it's also got a really good speaker. It runs really well. I did replace the axles with new Proto 2000 ones, just because they were getting kind of old and I didn't want to have them crack on me, just as a preventative measure. But I've never had any issues with this thing whatsoever. I gave it new couplers at some point, and I'm just able to run this thing with just about whatever I want. Here's another Southern Pacific unit. This is an SD40 in their experimental daylight scheme. I actually bought this from a different club member who had it new in box, and it was a pretty good deal. I only paid $100 for this thing. It's an Athearn, it's got DCC and sound. Never have I had any issues with this thing thus far. I replaced all the McHenrys on it with Katie's, and again, I usually stick it with that GP9 or a different unit that I have. This is an Athearn GP60M. I bought this thing DCC ready for $50 quite some time ago, which was a really good deal. I believe I replaced this thing with Katie's at some point in its past. I've got some pretty big plans for it in the future. It currently has a cheap Digitrax decoder in it, and I would like to upgrade this to have a really nice decoder and speaker, because I would like to modify this thing to be accurate to the same local I want to modify the GP40X that I showed earlier. This thing, I also want to add ditch lights to, some good lighting and whatnot. So overall, it's another pretty big project, but at the time being, it runs pretty well. This is my Bowser VO1000. I got this thing for, I believe, something like $60 from a Goodwill in Hawaii online, and that was a really good deal to me. This thing looked essentially new in box, and I used this thing quite a bit. I again threw in a fairly cheap decoder. Eventually, I'd like to give it a really nice sound decoder and whatnot, but it served me pretty well so far. It's just kind of a weak engine overall, though. Now it's time to take a break from my mostly complete and fully complete projects to move on to a whole bunch of incomplete projects that I'm still working on, starting with this Bachmann 70-tonner. I pulled this engine out of the trash of the club I'm part of quite some time ago, and I've done a lot to it. I gave it new trucks because the gears were cracked. I replaced the shell on it because another member nicely gave me a spare shell that he had laying around. And recently I just went in and replaced the motor on this thing and threw in a Tsunami 2 decoder. I still need to get a speaker for it, the lighting still needs some work, and this thing still needs a test run. Here's a Tyco Chattanooga. This one I believe just needs some traction tires, couplers, and a little bit of oil, and it'll be good to go. Here's a Mantua 040. I'll probably be restoring this one in the near future. I've worked on a few of these on the channel before. I think they're really good engines, and with just a little bit of work, I found that they can run great, as you've seen with my other Mantua 040s. Here's a Bachmann Santa Fe F9. I don't know if this one's got cracked gears or not, but this one also needs just a little bit of work, probably fresh oil at the bare minimum. Here's a Tyco Mantua Union Pacific GP20. This one's overall in really rough shape. The motor's completely seized up. And again, all the cosmetics on here are rough. I don't even know if I'll be restoring this thing or using it for parts, but we will see. Here's a Mantua F7. I've worked on a few of these things before. This one probably just needs some more basic work, like most of these engines do. Here's a Bachmann Norfolk and Western 1776 U-boat. This thing's actually a really neat looking engine. It's missing the horn and whatnot. I think this thing might need some new gears, and I'm going to try experimenting with some gears from eBay to see if that can help fix this thing, because people do make reproduction gears for this thing now. In a similar vein, I just made a video where I was working on this guy, which also has cracked gears, which I could not fix. I'm probably going to be taking this thing back and filming another video in the near future after I experiment with the engine I just shown you, with some of those reproduction eBay gears, because I think that'll be a fun thing to try out. Here's another AHM GP18, like the one I had as one of my first ever engines. This one, again, needs a pretty good cleanup and probably some mechanical work. Here is an AHM BL2. This one's got some really weird stuff going on with it, so I've got to work on this thing in a future video. If you can tell, the front truck is actually correct for the AHM model, but weirdly it's not accurate to the real thing. And the rear truck is a little more accurate to the real BL2. However, it's very inaccurate for this model, and it causes some weird grinding and whatnot and doesn't actually move. So this will be a very weird one to diagnose and work through, but I'm actually looking forward to it. Here's the Tyco 460 Spirit of 76. I do have the smokestack, but this thing does not run whatsoever. I've worked on a few of these with some mixed results, so hopefully this guy will run pretty well. And hopefully I can find a boiler cap, because these are really cool looking locomotives, and I'd love to have one of these things in good shape. Here's another Mantua Union Pacific F unit. This one, it looks like someone's actually been in here and worked on. This weight's kind of really weirdly glued into place, and it looks like someone's replaced the screws on this rear truck, so this will be a fun one to go in and see if anyone's done any sort of weird modifications to it. Here's a Tyco Midnight Special. I've restored at least one of these things on the channel before. I don't know if this one will be in a future video or not, but it just got to get some basic work done, probably just a good teardown and cleanup like most of these other Tyco things I have. Here's a really rough Tyco Mantua Burlington GP20. This one I actually got for free. It was on the free table of the club I'm part of, and it's in really bad shape. The whole front plow looks to be completely gone, but I think this one at some point I might want to try and fix up. We'll see though. At the same time as the Mantua GP20, I also got this regular Tyco GP20 with the more conventional power torque drive and stuff. This one is in just as bad of shape. We'll see. I might combine them into one video. Maybe they'll have their own separate videos. Maybe I won't even film them at all. We'll see. They've been sitting around waiting to get worked on for quite some time as well. Taking a break from Tyco, here's one of these weird Bachmann track cleaner things. These are like notoriously unreliable, but this one's got most of its components and stuff. I've seen on almost all of these this front truck is completely seized, but this rear one's actually somewhat free rolling. We'll see if I can get this thing to work. It'll need traction tires and a ton of stuff, but that'll be another pretty big project for me to try in the future. I've owned one of these in the past as well. Here's another Tyco Mantua F unit. This one was custom painted for Penn Central. Again, nothing crazy. It's just a conventional Tyco Mantua. It's going to need a little bit of work, just like all the other ones I've shown you. Here's a really weird one. This is an Aristocraft 040 that I got in an eBay lot quite some time ago. It was missing its tender. It's got some really weird stuff going on with it. I don't actually know how exactly I'm going to go about fixing it. I have a tender in mind that I might try and modify, but we'll see. If I get around to it, this will be a pretty big project, and if I can modify this thing the way I want to, this might actually turn out being a really neat looking engine. Another locomotive, I believe from even that same lot with the same story, is this Varney Casey Jones. This is in a really rough shape, as you can see. It doesn't have the original tender or anything, so in the future I want to restore this thing, see if I can find a good tender, and it might be fun to do some like custom cosmetic stuff with it, make it look really cool and really different. Next up is another Mantua F unit. This guy's missing a weight, and this one's actually painted for Penn Central, and it's not a custom job. Here's one that'll take a lot of work. It is a roundhouse box cab track cleaning thing. I had one of these before. It's a really slow runner. I might want to try rebuilding an entire chassis for this thing. This one doesn't run and has a whole bunch of issues, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing with this thing. I might get rid of it as is. I might try and fix it, but this is something I've got to decide on. Here's a project that's currently a pile of parts. This is my other AHM 240. I want to rebuild this and redetail it. A lot of the work I've done on it was pretty bad, so it definitely needs a lot of reworking. But I think in the end, hopefully I can make this thing a really nice engine and have it turn out exactly how I want it to. And I've got a pretty particular idea in mind, but this one is also way down my list. And here's my final incomplete project. This is an Athearn Blue Box SD9. Really all this thing is waiting on is some handrails. I just essentially need to paint them. They're all there, they're all glued together and in place. I just need to get my airbrush out, get some paints for these things, and paint them. And in theory, this will be done. I'd also like to get it some new pieces for these Mars, I forget what they're called, these particular big lights up here. And now I'll quickly go through all the engines that I'm currently selling off, first of which is this Rivarossi Heisler. I don't really have a need for this thing. I have so many Shays, and I don't really need an old Heisler to work on. It's a really neat piece. I worked on it quite some time ago in a video, and I just want to get rid of it, get it gone, because sure, it's nice and it's neat, but it's not really nice enough for the huge, vast array of other logging and related engines I have. This is my Lionel 462. I actually worked on this thing in another video quite some time ago and got it from a completely non-functional model to actually a pretty decent running engine. It's got a few little issues. This wheel's just got a tiny bit of rust on it still, but it runs pretty well. I just don't need this thing because I've got a whole bunch of other big steamers, and this one's not all that interesting, nor is it all that nice, so it can go down the road. Next up is this little ATSF switcher. It just doesn't run the greatest. I've done a whole bunch of work to it. It does not run up to my standards. It's a really neat little thing, but I've got so many switchers that it's really not worth chasing down this one. It's the exact same problem that I'm having with this switcher, which I worked on recently. Again, it's pretty decent. It actually runs okay. It's really loud though, too loud for my standards, and I just really don't need this little thing in my collection, so it's going down the road as well. Another little switcher experiencing the exact same fate is this AHM Firefox 040. Again, it's the exact same topic. I don't really need this thing. It runs perfectly fine, but I've got other engines that look nicer and run better, so this one gets to leave. And it's once again the same situation with this Athearn Hustler. I've actually got at least one other Athearn Hustler. I can't remember if I have a second or not, but this guy, I don't really need it. It, again, does not really run bad whatsoever. I just have too many of these things, and I don't really need a blank one that just runs okay. Here's an Atlas Cotton Belt GP40. This is just kind of a weird engine that I got for free. I don't really use it. It's a nice engine, but I've got nicer stuff, and again, it's just not all that interesting either. Here is a PRR SW7. I bought this thing in a lot quite some time ago, and got it from a non-running engine to an actual nice functioning engine, and got a video out of it. This thing I'm getting rid of because I have another SW7 that's in much nicer shape, and it runs about the same, so I don't really need two of these. Plus, I can get rid of one of them and save myself some space. Here is a Bachmann Amtrak F40. I'm getting rid of this one, essentially, just because I bought a newer Walthers mainline one with DCC and sound. It's a Phase 4 instead of a Phase 3, but this one, again, also not in perfect shape, but there's nothing wrong with it. Here's another one that actually runs really well. This is an Atlas Kato Santa Fe Alco. This thing is just in really rough cosmetic shape. I got it for free. And for what it is, I don't really want to put in the effort to make this thing perfect because I probably won't end up using it all that much. Here's one that I spent a lot of time working on. This is a really weird, I forget what exactly the manufacturer was. I think it's ATT, it's an FT. It's got some like AHM style components, Mahano maybe, but it's a really obscure thing. It's just too loud for my liking, and I essentially just bought it to fix, see if I can make this thing run because it's so weird and I think it deserved a second chance at life. So now that this thing runs, I don't need it and it can go down the road to someone else. Here's an Athearn Blue Box CSX, I believe GP38. This thing I'm getting rid of just because I've had it for so long, and again, I've never used it. The shell on this thing does not stay in place. But overall, it runs fine, doesn't have any couplers, and I don't really do anything with CSX. Another Bachmann model I'm getting rid of is this FT. It was one of my earlier engines. I have so many things now. I don't really use the thing whatsoever, and recently it's been giving me a few troubles. I don't like the coupler on it. There's a lot of things about this one I don't like, so it can leave. Here's another Athearn Amtrak locomotive. It's this P40 or P42 that I bought quite some time ago at a train show for like $5 that didn't work. Now it works, it's just a little bit too loud for my liking, and again, I don't really need it. Here's another Blue Box SD9. This one's kind of detailed. I'm choosing to get rid of this one because I have the other one. I like that nicer looking Blue Box one just a little bit more, and these things are worth a little bit of money. I sold one of mine and got rid of it for a pretty good price. So I'm probably going to do the same with this one, even though it isn't perfect. A lot of people seem to like the detailing on these. Here's a Tyco Santa Fe 460. Again, I've got a whole bunch of these things, as you saw in my Spirit of 1776 one, and I've also got the other Bachmann one, sort of like this, so I really don't need all these 460s, and a few of them I'm going to let go. Here's my Rivarossi 080. This was an engine from the trash that I took out and revived. I actually got this thing working again in a recent video. And by recent, it's probably a year or two old at this point, but it's a really good engine. I used the pilot from something else on it. It was really rough, but I'm just getting rid of this thing because I don't like the gearing on it that much, and I just don't use it. This is a Tyco Rock Island Shark Nose that I'm getting rid of just because I don't ever use it. It's a really nice looking shell, but again, I do nothing with it. It's a good engine, but here's one that might bug some of you. This is my custom Back to the Future 460-131. This one's actually fairly okay. There's some cosmetic things about it I don't like, and it does not run perfectly, but there's been someone else I know who's been inquiring about this thing for quite some time, so I'm going to let it go to him since he wants to do some work to it. So I like it. I don't really want the whole end result anymore, so he can enjoy this thing. Next up is this Blue Box tunnel motor. I'm just getting rid of it because I have a lot nicer SP power, plus I don't really have a need for this thing. It's just been sitting around for quite some time. And here's the final engine I'm getting rid of. This is essentially a Bachmann 260 with a Roundhouse 262 shell and tender. I had some pretty big plans for this thing, but eventually I decided that it just wasn't worth my time. We've gone through all the locomotives I am getting rid of, so now onto the stuff that I am keeping, and we've got no other weird oddities in here for the most part. This is my Intermountain cab forward. I actually got this thing, I believe, for free because it was fairly broken from another member. This thing needs a new decoder thrown in it. I just haven't had the time to do that yet, so it's just sitting around waiting to get some parts. This is a Bachmann Santa Fe 484 with DCC. I was given this as a gift by the member of the club I'm part of. Once again, apparently that's where a ton of my trains have been coming from. And this one's actually just a nice engine. I've added some weight to it. It's a Bachmann, so it doesn't pull all that much, but I've never really had any major issues with this thing. That same club member also gave me this old Athearn Genesis SD45. This thing is in pretty rough shape, but it was a free engine. It's got a decoder, the speaker's pretty bad on it, but it works, and again, it's got DCC, so I cannot complain. This is my Bachmann Doodlebug. I can't actually remember exactly where I got this one from, but it's been a really good engine. I added just a Katy on the rear, and other than that, I've done nothing to it. It's also a really powerful locomotive. Just for fun once, we were able to get it to pull about a 10-car Amtrak train. Maybe it was 8 or something like that, but it was still pretty impressive for this little thing, only having that front truck powered. Here's a Bachmann unit that I really like. This is a Western Pacific GS64 that I bought for $50 with DCC and sound, which was a great deal. I really like this engine. I added a ton of weight to it so it can pull quite a bit. It's a Bachmann, so the motor is still not the greatest. Eventually, on both this thing and that other 484, I want to see if it's possible to swap out the motors with a much higher torque, maybe another Northwest Shortline motor, because so far I'm really happy with those. I also want to get this thing smoke deflectors, which another friend might be helping me out with. Apparently it's just impossible to find like custom smoke deflectors for these things. I don't understand why, but I have not been able to find any despite a lot of searching, and this thing might just need a new boiler cap because it really isn't holding in this front handrail whatsoever. Here is my Bachmann speeder. I was once again given this thing for free, which was great. This is a really cool piece. I've actually been on a real speeder before, and again, this thing has not given me any issues. I'd like to put a decoder in this thing, but I have not been able to find a way to do so. Here's a Bachmann DeWitt Clinton. I actually got this thing for free in the same lot as I believe both the Jupiter and another trolley from really early on in this video. This thing's actually really cool. These were essentially brand new in box. I have all the cars for it too, and aside from one wheel that's slipping a little bit, it actually runs really well. With the same situation as the engine I just showed you, this is my Bachmann John Bull. I've got 2 of these things. One's in much worse shape, but I'm not pulling that one out. This one came from the exact same lot as that DeWitt Clinton. It also has all its coaches, and it runs really well. Another little fun thing is I've seen the John Bull in real life, so it's kind of nice to have one of these really cool vintage engines that I've actually seen before. And I've got one more of these little old-time Bachmann steamers, again, from the same lot, same everything. This is a Lafayette, which is kind of a weird wheel arrangement. This thing actually runs pretty well, just like the other two. And this guy, again, has all of its cars. Right here are my Napa Valley Wine Train F units. I have this pair. This guy's a dummy, and this one's powered. They are both Athearn units. I have an entire wine train to go with these guys as well. I've actually got some family friends who live really close to the wine train, so it's kind of a neat little thing to have. This was also another gift from a member of the same club I'm part of, which was really nice, and I'm really glad to have these things, along with an entire train. This is my Walthers Mainline Amtrak F40 with DCC and sound. This thing I believe was pretty cheap. It's a really nice engine. It's got some stuff that's a little bit lower quality, but I believe I replaced the couplers with some Katys. I can't remember if I replaced all of them, because I know I at least replaced the rear one and needed a taller coupler, but it's a pretty good, powerful engine, and I just have it pull, as of now, like 3 or 4 Horizon cars. Here's another one of my Shays. This is actually the first one I bought, and it's in probably the roughest shape. I've done a lot of weird work to this thing. I want to completely redo all the wiring that's down here. I installed a new motor when I got it, but I would like to replace that with a smaller motor so I can remount this tender where it actually belongs, and it just needs some general adjustments and stuff, and eventually I'd like to see if it's possible to add lighting to this thing. It's in pretty rough shape currently, but I might keep it, I might get rid of it, or I might give it off to a friend who actually wants one of these things. Here's probably my nicest Shay. This one, just like my other one, has a cheap DCC decoder, but I bought this one for $5 as is at another train show because it was broken. The reasons why it was broken is A, it had a decoder and they tested it on DC to begin with, and B, the coupler between the motor and the whole gearbox was missing, so I made one myself, and this thing actually runs really well. It's a really quiet one for a Shay, and I've never seen one that actually runs this great. Everything about it looks good, I think I just need to letter it, maybe put in a sound decoder. It's even got lights and everything, so I'm really happy with this one. I didn't even have to upgrade the couplers on it. Here is an MTH SD70 ACE, which is Union Pacific 1111. This is actually a really decent model. I put a silent decoder in it that I got for free quite some time ago, and it's been a pretty good engine. I have a lot that I want to do to this. It needs a lot of detail work because I got this years ago, and it's, at least from then, not been treated the nicest, but it's still in pretty good shape. I want to get a good sound decoder in there, and I want to modify it, just make it look a little bit better, because I want to build a business train that this thing led in 2020 that I actually got to see right by my house, which was really nice. So that's a big project for the future, and this thing will need a ton of work, but I think if I can find all the cars and get this thing done, it should be something really nice to have. This is my Athearn Roundhouse Norfolk Southern 8520. Athearn sold this as a -9, even though it isn't that. It's whatever it says on the side there, which I don't feel like reading out. Again, this is a model I got ages ago that I want to do a lot of detail work to in the future. I think it's got, I don't even remember what decoder it's got, maybe something NCE. I put it in ages ago, but this thing's, again, been a pretty solid engine. I had to clean the commutator once because it was having issues, but I also put Katie's on it, and since then, I have been problem-free with it. This is another MTH unit that I actually really like. This is, I believe, a -9 for CNW. I also put another silent decoder in this thing. I'd love to, just like the other two I just showed you, put DCC and sound in them at some point. I really like the handrails on this one. Everything about it is really good. It's also got Katie's, but I think they might need to be adjusted because I think the rear one's just a little bit high, but that'll be a project for me to work on in the future. And other than that, it's been a pretty solid locomotive. It's also got ditch lights, which is nice. And the final locomotive I have is this Canadian Pacific Walters Mainline Gevo with sound. My only real complaints with it is that the sound is just a little bit quiet. It's worked pretty well. I have not used this thing in quite some time. I do think I need to replace the couplers because these don't seem like they're the greatest, but we'll see. I'd like to maybe put a new speaker in this thing. A friend did actually weather it for me, and it looks really nice, but who knows. I was thinking about getting rid of this thing, but I'm not entirely sure. I mostly want to build with modern power a Union Pacific grain train, so we'll see. I could throw this in as like some foreign power or something, but that's something for me to decide in the future. And this, again, is the last of my DCC locomotives, so now we can go into all my DC engines that I'll keep, and be warned, I have a lot of those as well. Here's my Tyco Clementine. I recently restored this locomotive. I gave it an Easy Mate on the front, and I gave it a Katie on the back. I upgraded the magnets in the tender, and overall this thing runs pretty well. I don't really have that much to do to it. I don't know if I'll be keeping this one long term, but for now it runs pretty well, and it's a really nice engine to have, and I can pair it with another one that you'll see at some point. Here is another Tyco. This time it's a very old trolley. I actually bought this one quite some time ago in a lot for only $10. It had a whole bunch of other random junk and things in it too, but I thought that was pretty good for one of these. I've had this trolley probably for 4 years now, and I don't ever plan on getting rid of it. It's not perfect. There's a little bit of damage all over it, but again, it's a really nice piece. It runs pretty well, and I have no reason to get rid of this one. Here is yet another single truck trolley. This one is an IHC, AHM, Mahana, whatever you want to call it. I actually got this one, I believe I got it for free quite some time ago. I can't exactly remember where this one came from, but it runs pretty well. It didn't need all that much work, and it's just kind of a neat little thing. It looks a lot more European than it does American. I've tried to do some research, and I can't really find exactly what it's based on, but it's a cool, reliable piece nonetheless. This one may confuse a few of you. Many of you may just see this as some bobber caboose. Specifically, this is a Bachmann bobber caboose I got for free quite some time ago. However, quite a few modifications have gone into this thing, which makes it a pretty weird locomotive, which you can actually call it a locomotive, because if I remove the shell, it's powered. I've added a motor, I believe this is a Mahano motor, and made this thing band drive. With the way this caboose is set up, this one might actually be a Mantua or something. These bars made for good electrical contacts, so this thing's actually able to pick up power and run pretty well. This magnet just helps it run a little bit smoother, and I actually do really enjoy having this thing around. I had a decoder in it for quite some time, but I decided to get rid of it because it did not want to cooperate. Plus, I don't really think there's a good way to cram another decoder into this thing. There's no real purpose to having this thing, it's just kind of a hilarious piece to own. Another high-speed train in my collection, which is pretty fun to have, is my Tyco Turbo Train. I have 2 other cars that go with this thing, and this thing's been a great engine. I had to replace the traction tires, and I added a little bit of weight to this thing since I run nickel-silver track on my one loop, and I can't really run it with steel track, which it was designed for, so I've made it suffice. It runs pretty well. I need to tinker with it pretty often, but I enjoy having this thing. At some point, I'd like to modify a little bit more so that I can actually have a DCC decoder, because it would be really fun to run around my club at high speeds. This right here is a Rock Island Lionel Husky switcher. I bought this thing at a train show quite some time ago. I think it was $5 or something like that. This thing is in really sharp condition for such an old engine. Everything looks really crisp. All the side frames are rather shiny, which I do quite like. And the, I guess you can call this lettering, I don't know what you'd call this, on the bottom is actually really nice looking, and I like having it there. I restored this thing quite some time ago, and to my surprise, it actually runs pretty quiet. It's fairly on par with some of my Athearn Hustlers, which is kind of neat. I plan on keeping this thing around. Maybe I'll give it Katie's or something in the future, but for now, I'm pretty low on those. Here's another Rock Island locomotive. This time, it's an Athearn Blue Box SW1500. I got this thing around Christmas time on eBay. It came mostly with rolling stock that I was interested in, but I've always wanted a rock switcher, and this one fits the bill pretty nicely. It's not in perfect shape, but I restored this thing on the channel. It had a cracked gear, and from the last time I ran it, it ran pretty well. There's nothing major I want to do with this thing. Maybe I'll replace it, get rid of it in the future, but I enjoy having it for the time being. Another very similar Athearn model is the Southern Pacific switcher. I bought this at another train show, I believe for $5 or so. This one didn't have any cracked gears, and it did actually come with these Katie's on it. I don't know if I'll be keeping this one around once again. I might replace it with a nicer Southern Pacific switcher. Maybe replace both this one and that other Rock Island unit with another nice Southern Pacific switcher. We'll see. Again, these are both nice engines to have around for now. Moving away to something weirder, this is a lifelike Santa Fe F40. I bought this engine quite some time ago as I wanted to compile a collection of all these weird lifelike F40s that I decided to scrap the idea of. This one's kind of neat to have around though. It runs really nicely. I replaced the chassis with something not original just because I had one that had a pretty poor shell on it, and I thought this one would be much funnier to keep around. Again, I don't have plans for this thing. I don't know if I'll hold on to it for that long, but as with most of these things, I enjoy it. Now, here's an engine that's got quite the story. This is a Mantua Santa Fe F7. Originally, this started life as two of them. I had one of these things that was in pretty poor shape. It had a really bad front truck. The shell was really beat up and just not worth it. However, the rear motor on the thing was really good. And I got another one, originally this one, which was also free, this time on the free table of the club, and it had a really good shell and a really good front truck. However, the motor was essentially dead. So I had these things. One of them didn't run so great. The other one ran okay, but the front truck kind of hindered it. So I decided to combine the two of them together, and I have this thing. It's a really neat kind of Frankenstein locomotive, but it does actually run really nicely. Another unusual Mantua locomotive, which also happens to be Santa Fe, is this Alco. I forget if it's a C420 or a C430, but this engine has some pretty odd modifications, which is why I bought this thing. I also got it from a train show for just $5, and the reason I bought it initially is, as you can see on the bottom, the rivets on this thing were replaced, and I wanted to see exactly how that was done. When I got further into this thing, I also noticed something really neat. This thing had been wired to have a reversing headlight, which these Tycos never have. The whole body on this thing is also in, like, pristine shape. I could not resist this thing. Again, it also runs pretty well. It's not the nicest locomotive in the world, but for a Tyco, this thing is really neat. Another locomotive from that exact same train show is this Santa Fe Walters Trainline FA. I really do like these FAs. There's a railroad nearby me that uses them, such as the Wine Train, which is why I have a whole bunch of these FAs. I was originally going to repaint this one, but decided against it because it's just not the highest detailed model. I don't really have a need for this thing, but it runs really well, so I keep it around. I replaced it with Katie's when I got it, and I've never had to do anything to this thing. It just always runs perfectly. Continuing the Santa Fe trend, here is a Santa Fe RDC, an Athearn Blue Box band drive one that I bought from eBay for, I believe, $20 or so, probably 4 or 5 years ago at this point. This thing has been tried and true. Never have I had any issues with this thing, and it's just a really fun piece to own. I don't really have a need for a Santa Fe RDC, but I keep this one around because it's a neat engine, and these things are pretty sought after apparently. Next up is an engine that I've had for quite a long time. It was actually one of my first. This is a Tyco Illinois Central C630. Throughout the years, this thing has had a ton of abuse. I practiced a lot of restorations on this thing, and it's never been completely right. There's been a lot of actual major component failures going on with this thing, which I finally replaced. Most of it had to do with the hardware in the rear truck, and now that thing is sitting pretty nicely. This engine now runs great after a ton of work, and I don't want to do anything to it. I'm going to leave it as is, and it's going to stay in my collection long term. Here's another engine with a really cool story. This is a custom painted Rivarossi E8. This is for the ASC, which is the Aptos Santa Cruz. This was actually given to me by a prospective member of the club I'm part of. He came in with a whole bunch of old DC engines that he wanted to see if he could convert to DCC. I helped him test run these things because they had been sitting for ages, and this one did not work. He gave this one to me to try and fix up, and also because he thought it would be neat of me to have this thing after I helped him out with all that stuff. And I got this thing restored and running really nicely. This is something that was custom done in the 80s, and I think it's really nice. Sure, this decal is fading just a little bit, but I think this is a great custom. I do need to put a new spring in the rear coupler, but other than that, I love having this thing around. There's nothing particularly exciting about a Rivarossi E8, but this one has a really cool backstory, just like I just shared. Here is a Tyco GP20. I got this thing for free quite some time ago. The paint on it is really rough, so are the handrails. Last I remember, this thing runs pretty decently, but I rarely ever use this thing. Here's another engine that used to belong to my grandparents, which I only got recently. This is a Union Pacific SD40-2 made by Athearn Blue Box. I always have really liked these Union Pacific SD40-2s, and I wanted one for quite some time. They finally found this thing laying around, and I'm glad to have it. I had to replace a whole bunch of the gears that were cracked on this thing, but it's been a pretty solid engine. I might need to upgrade the axles once more to some modern Athearn RTR axles. I also installed some Cadies on this thing, and it's just been a really strong locomotive, and I enjoy keeping this one around. Continuing the SD40-2 trend, here's a Burlington Northern SD40-2 that I got for free quite some time ago. It's a really neat engine. It's actually got some newer Athearn axles, which is nice. It's got some newer motor mounts, and I don't remember if I had to put Cadies on or if it came with them. It's missing all its handrails and its horn, but I use this engine quite a bit. Here is a Blue Box U-boat. This was another broken $5 train show find. I actually went in and restored this thing pretty heavily, and I really do like the outcome. I used some RC airline fuel tubing to actually recreate a drive shaft in this thing, and so far I've had no issues with it. This is an older style Blue Box, so it's got a little bit of an older motor, and the axles on here are a much older design. I gave this thing some Cadies, and since then I've done nothing to it but run it. This is an AHM Santa Fe switcher. However, this was not the shell that was originally on this model. If you remember the Firefox engine that I showed quite some time ago as an engine I'm getting rid of, this shell originally was on that locomotive, and the Firefox's shell which was originally on this chassis. The reason I switched them is I like this shell much more. This one essentially looks brand new minus the missing horn, and I do really like having the Santa Fe switcher compared to the Firefox one. This chassis runs a lot better, which is why I gave it the nicer shell. Here is an Athearn Hustler switcher. This one used to belong to my grandparents' neighbors. This one needed some new bands, which I replaced, and other than that, I've had no issues with this thing. I believe I also put Cadies on. They might have done that, but I cannot fully remember. And I'm going to keep this engine for quite a while. I do really like these Hustlers. I wanted to collect a whole bunch of them for a while, but decided that one is enough. Now we are at one of my favorite switchers in my entire collection. This is an AHM Canadian National SW1. I bought this thing on eBay for probably far too much quite a few years ago, and this thing has been a really good locomotive for me. I've done a lot to it. First of which, I replaced the motor with a CAN motor instead of the old AHM, I believe, 3-poles that they had. Second of all, I actually had a whole bunch of LEDs that were pretty large, and just for fun, I tried wiring in reverse lights, and I think it looks pretty good. They work nicely, and they illuminate quite well, and I also have installed some new traction tires. I would eventually like to replace these couplers with some Cadies, and maybe make it some handrails, but I don't know. As is, it's a great engine. Here is my final diesel switcher, and it's one that I also like quite a lot. This is a Fleshman Baldwin switcher. I believe this is sort of a mashup between a VO660 and a VO1000, and you saw my other VO1000 quite some time ago. This is actually more sized to S scale, but it's still a really cool piece. This is fully die-cast, and it actually runs great. I got this thing for $5 from another club member who just wanted it gone, and while it's not in perfect shape, it's a really neat vintage piece. I don't know exactly how old this thing is, but I have never seen another one of these things, and I'm glad to have it. Here is another GP20. This one, through some miracle, I've owned for nearly 4 years. This one is for Santa Fe. The story behind this engine is sort of weird. I got this one in a lot off of Facebook. It was mostly N-scale rolling stock and HO rolling stock, along with this locomotive, and the whole lot was only $12, so why should I say no to that? And this thing has just been a good, solid runner ever since. It's had a few minor issues here and there, but it's been pretty reliable. However, I have on many occasions tried to get rid of this thing, and for whatever reason, I just can't bring myself to get rid of this one. I know I need to, I know I don't use it all that often, but it's still here. Another very long-term member of my fleet, the first engine I ever unboxed on this channel, is this Lionel GP30. This one's gone through a lot over the years. It originally had a Burlington Northern shell, which at some point in time I replaced with this Great Northern shell from a Bachmann. This thing I actually attempted to restore and failed quite a few times. It was not perfect, and I've done some refining, and now it's at a position where I would like it to be, and it's still a work in progress. I'm still trying to figure out a good way to mount a new coupler box on here, which is why there's no coupler on the rear. This one has been a perpetual project, and at some point I'd like it to be done, and I'll probably, again, hold on to this one for a while. It's definitely kept its spot in my fleet throughout the years, and it's not going to be giving that up anytime soon. Here is a really neat piece that took me ages to find. This is a lifelike NASCAR locomotive. I have an entire train set to go with this thing, however this is just the locomotive because I'm only showing you locomotives today. This one had a whole bunch of issues when I got it. I actually swapped the chassis with a lifelike Santa Fe F7 that I had because one, I have too many Santa Fe F7s, and two, this thing is so much cooler than any F7 I've ever owned will be, and I'd like to keep this thing long term. I know I say this with a whole bunch of stuff, but I am a pretty huge NASCAR fan. For instance, these will be showing up in the near future, and in general, I have a whole bunch of NASCAR diecasts and stuff just laying around that I can grab. None of these were planned for me to show off here, but yeah, they're all over. I'm a big NASCAR fan, so this thing makes a lot of sense for me to own. Here is a Tyco Spirit of 76. I've worked on this thing, I believe, once on the channel. There's been nothing major that's gone wrong with this thing. I think I eventually replaced the traction tires on it. Maybe I wired in a new headlight, but other than that, there's been nothing special going on with this one. It's a little bit faded on this side, but it's been in my collection for quite a while at this point. Going back to Lifelike, here is my other Lifelike F40. This one I think I got for free in some lot recently. I've owned so many of these things throughout the years. It's probably been 6 or so of these Union Pacific F40s that I can't remember which is which anymore. I think this one runs pretty well, but it's been sitting for quite a while. This is a Tyco Canadian Pacific F7. This is an engine that I got in a lot from Facebook for free, probably in 2021 or 2022, and then it had quite a few things wrong with it. From that lot, this is the only piece I still have in my collection. Some stuff that was initially wrong with it, and I restored this thing on the channel quite a long time ago. I don't think the video is still up, but it had some cracked gears. I believe also a stripped out gear, which I replaced. This idler here is still cracked, but that doesn't do much, so I can live with that. And this thing runs pretty well. It's just been sitting for quite a while, though. And here is the last diesel in my collection. This is a Rock Island AHM F7. This one I was gifted ages ago along with another one, however I got rid of the second one. This unit has had a motor upgrade. I believe it's got a Mahano 5-pole instead of the old 3-pole. It runs pretty well. Again, it's in pretty bad cosmetic shape. I might need to just replace the shell at some point, but it's just been a strong, reliable engine. Now, all that's left in my fleet are steam locomotives, starting with this guy. This is a Rivarossi 040. I believe I got this in a lot of a few other things that was about $40. I think this was in around June of last year or something like that. I restored both this and another, I believe, identical 040 in one video, and that was pretty fun. This guy's got quite a bit of damage. The pilot's in really rough shape. Believe there's a lot of stuff broken off the back here. But it's just a decent, reliable engine. I don't really need a whole bunch of 040s, so maybe some of these will be on the chopping block in the near future. Next up is an 040 that I really do like. This is a lifelike tea kettle that I have modified by installing a Model Power chassis. This thing has been a great locomotive. It was really fun trying to fix this tea kettle in the first place, and I think this kit bash is actually really neat. This engine might need a trailing truck at some point. I'm not entirely sure on that one, but this is a really fun piece. I'd like to put DCC in it at some point, but I think the whole look, especially the way the front of this locomotive looks with the just weird boxy style and this neat little pilot, works really well. Here is a Mantua Santa Fe 040. This is the third Mantua 040 that I actually own. I do really like these guys as well. I find them really reliable, and with just a little bit of work, they all seem to run really well for me. So I'm probably going to keep buying these things and fixing them up because I enjoy it. This one took quite a bit of work. It had a smoke unit that I had to remove. I upgraded the magnets and whatnot on this thing, and I think the result is great. This thing runs really smoothly, but I have some nicer Mantua 040s in my collection. It's got a Katy on the back. It's not too special, but it's a really strong locomotive for what it is. Here is a very similar lifelike 040. I believe this one's technically branded as Play Art or something like that, even though it's really just a lifelike. I have done absolutely nothing to this locomotive. I put it on my layout and I've just ran it. That's all it needed. Didn't need any oil or anything. This one's just been perfect from the day I got it, which is kind of odd and unusual for one of these things. Typically, they all tend to have cracked gears. I don't know what I'm doing with this thing. I think it's wired in reverse though, so I might have to fix that in the future. Skipping over a few small steamers for now, let's move on to the biggest locomotive in my collection. This is my River Rossi Big Boy. I bought this thing for $5 or $10 broken at a train show quite a few years ago, and this thing has been a great engine. The only reason this thing was broken is it had a few loose screws inside the engine. I wanted to make a restoration video out of this thing, but it didn't actually need enough work to warrant one. I tightened the screw and it actually ran really smoothly, so I'm really happy with this thing. These things are worth quite a bit, so it might make sense for me to get rid of it, but saying I own a River Rossi Big Boy is just kind of fun. Here is another Tyco locomotive which I have been working on for years, and this one I believe is actually my first ever HO scale steam locomotive. This is a Tyco Southern 060. This one's been a lot of work. It was beat up from me as a kid, and I put a lot into it trying to make it nice and actually run well. I've replaced the motor, I've replaced, I believe, the cab and the tender. I think I also added this new coupler box on here. I replaced that screw. Some of these screws aren't original, but for the most part, I believe all that's left original is the motor block, these wheels, and the chassis, as well as the basic shell itself. This thing has served me great, and I don't ever plan on getting rid of it. It's just such a fun piece that I'm really fond of, and I don't want it gone. Here is another Tyco 060, this time a Rock Island one. I'm a little less fond of this thing. I did get it for free, but this one runs not as well, and I don't have as much attachment to it. So I do like it, but I don't really know if I need two Tyco Power Torque 060s in my collection. I've heard the Southern ones are maybe a little more uncommon, but again, I'm not entirely certain. Continuing the 060 trend, here is a Bachmann 060, one of the old split chassis ones that I got for free. This one, again, is also not perfect. It's pretty loud. That's just how these things are. I had one in the past. It was also pretty loud. I don't know how long I'll be able to keep this one going. I think the gears are starting to fail, and I don't really think it's worth trying to put in a ton of effort into fixing. Here's one of the weirder steam locomotives in my fleet that actually functions. This is, I believe, a Model Power Lifelike, something like that 260. These things almost always have cracked gears, and they almost never run. However, I've actually found a fix for this one. This thing actually shares a specific gear with an Athearn Blue Box diesel. The teeth on it are exactly the same, so I just did a little bit of finagling, installed that gear on the axle of this locomotive, and it runs great. I want to try and find another one of these so I can film how I did that, because I think that would be really useful, but this thing's been really strong ever since I've done that. And even with that, I also installed a Katy, just because it's been such a good engine. Here is another really odd piece. This is a Kitbash diecast 2662 of some sort. I think the chassis is from some unknown Japanese brass steamer. I think this is some odd 460 boiler. I don't know what this tender's from, but it's got a weird, I believe, booster truck. I don't understand why it would have this, but it's kind of neat. This locomotive needs a ton of work. It does not run the greatest. It's got a really weird, archaic drive system. Eventually, I want to completely redo everything about this unit, but that will take a lot of time and a lot of effort. Here is another River Rossi 240. This is actually the first of the three that I bought at a train show. I think it was $15 in complete condition. I tried restoring it, which I didn't really need to, and getting this back on and off was a huge pain. I never want to do that ever again on another one of these things, so don't expect a restoration of another one anytime soon. This one's been a really solid runner, and I've got no complaints whatsoever about it. It's just a neat piece. I also gave it a Katy at some point in the past. Here's another really weird steam locomotive which I never want to let go of. This is a Play Art 040. It's a really weird, funky looking model. I don't know exactly what it's based on, But in 2020, something like that, I bought one of these for really cheap on eBay, and I just adored the thing until it broke. So I bought another one of them. This one's in really nice shape, at least I believe. My old one was missing the whole funnel smokestack up here. I installed some Cadies, I gave it some oil and grease. It's a little bit noisy, but I can live with it. Here is a Rivarossi Berkshire, specifically a nickel plate road one, and this one's got kind of a fun story. This engine was initially thrown in the trash, and then after that I rescued it, took it home, gave it a really good cleanup, and restored it on the channel. I think this engine turned out great for how it looked beforehand, and it actually runs really nicely, and I'm pretty happy with that. The headlight's kind of dim, but that's kind of normal on some of these Rivarossi steamers, and I also equipped it with a Cadie. To keep this one, I actually got rid of my second Berkshire. I believe it was my Paramarquette one, and now I've just got this one. I don't know if I need to keep this one because, as you can see, I've got so many other locomotives, but it is kind of a nice piece. Here is my Hogwarts Express 460. This is a Bachmann. I actually got this thing for free along with 2 cars. It came from the same lot as a whole bunch of other stuff like the Bachmann old-time steamers that you saw earlier. This one's just a really nice thing. A lot of my family members like the movies and the books, so it's kind of fun to have this thing. It's a really fun thing to just bring out when people want to see a train. Here is a Tyco 440. This one, as you can see, is in pretty rough shape. I got this one, again, at a train show for $5, being sold as broken, and I fixed the thing on the channel. The whole reason it was broken is that it was missing a drive shaft, and what I did is I used some of that RC airline fuel tubing, and I used that to make a drive shaft. It works really well, and I think it actually looks nicer than the drive shafts Mantua had on these things. Again, this locomotive doesn't look perfect, but I think it's got a pretty fun beat-up looking look. This side, maybe I could touch up the paint a little bit on. I don't know, it's kind of a neat patina that this thing has, so I'll probably leave it alone. And here is the final locomotive in my collection, so far at least. This is a Tyco Chattanooga, and this is an engine that I did a lot of work to. This engine initially, the block on this thing was in really rough shape and was too far gone, so I had a Tyco Clementine that had some really bad cosmetics to it, and I actually tore that thing down and replaced everything with the shell of this locomotive. So essentially this is my old Clementine underneath, but it's got a new look. I have not done very much with this thing. It was kind of a fun project to try and attempt, but I don't really know if I need this with the amount of other Chattanoogas that I have. And with that, that is every HO scale locomotive that I own. As of now, I am probably going to be buying more engines at a show tonight, so maybe I should have waited for then, but oh well, you'll see those in a few weeks.